Hi guys, about 2 weeks or so ago I already released a video about the Dell Venue 8 Pro 5855, but back then I didn't really want to call it a review because I kind of cancelled my review process after like 3 days because of a few things that I mentioned. It was the display, just 1280 by 800, not something really great to look at, and just 2 GB of RAM. Initially it was planned that I get the full HD version with 4 GB of RAM, and I already said back then maybe this will change my opinion. By chance I got it again, gave it this time a full proper review period, and here is what I think so far now. If you just check the design and build quality, nothing has changed. It still has the little gap that I complained about. It's still a little bit on the bigger and heavier, bulkier side, but the rest is fine. It doesn't really bend too much and it feels quite sturdy. It doesn't maybe feel premium or anything like that, but still does a fine job. So no major complaints here. So that's why I want to get into the big change here, and that is the display. Because now we have the full HD version, and I can already tell you I like this one so much more, because if you check the pics, now everything is sharp, now everything is crisp, the colors are a lot more vibrant, a lot more vivid and nice to look at. The viewing angles are better. So in overall this is a way better display, and this one gets my total approval, because now reading here in the browser and all that is just a way more enjoyable experience, because before everything was quite grainy. I still think the panel isn't quite that bright, because we are already at 100%, and on the camera here it looks nice, but especially the viewing angles, if you go like this, shift quite dramatically and it's a little bit more dull. So it's definitely not the brightest panel. Indoors it's fine, but outdoors, if you are on the go, seeing this more of a business tablet, it could get quite hard to actually see something. So the display now is absolutely fine. I would have wished for it to be a little bit brighter, but indoors for me it's quite okay. The resolution does make a huge difference, and this one would have been improved by me. But what about the sound? And I actually complained about that one as well, because my had this odd little fluctuations where it got loud and louder or quieter. This is not the case here on this version. So everything is fine here, and we can check that really quick so we can get a glimpse for the sound. So as you can see, the speaker still on the right side, still just mono, and still doesn't really sound that amazing. It still could be definitely louder. I noticed, for example, if I use VLC player and I can crank it up to 160%, it's fine enough, but in most apps you just can't do that. So if you watch a YouTube video or just a normal video on Netflix or something like that, it will run on its limit, and you can't really do just much about that. There is a little bit of software tweaking that you can do, but it won't really change a thing. So the speaker is quite weak and a little bit of a disappointment, because on the original Dell Venue 8 Pro it was a lot more satisfying. Now let's get to the next big change, and that would be 4 GB of RAM. And I said I don't actually think it will make a big difference, because I think the CPU is on its limit. But it actually did make more of a difference than I thought, because the whole device, as you can see here, just performs a little bit more snappy, because the resources are just there. It will still have to reload between apps quite often, because if you jump here, as you can see, it already did redraw. And it does that often, because I don't know, I think still Windows 10 is quite an intensive and RAM hog in terms of that, because it's odd. If you jump in this app, it had to reload. If you jump now here, not so much. And here, where is it? There, it has to reload. So just in terms of smoothness, it is absolutely fine. All the apps, all the universal apps are absolutely fine. But that is something that I've definitely noted, that all the universal apps have this tendency to having to redraw. Because you've seen Chrome didn't, because Chrome is a full proper desktop application. But Tubecast or the Groove Player, and I can show you this once again. This is the Groove Player. Now let's switch to Tubecast. It had to reload. Switch to Edge, which is an universal app, and switch to Groove once again. It has to reload. So this is definitely a thing of universal apps. I kind of maybe see this a reason for that, because they are planned to run also on low-end tablets, on lower-end phones, like for example in Continuum. And maybe there just the reserves aren't there. But I think the moment you have a proper device with at least 4 GB of RAM, this should not be the case. So I'm not quite sure if that's a limitation of the apps or of Windows 10 using Windows or universal apps in general, but this is a major draw point. But this is not something the device can do for. Like I told you, jumping between apps now works a lot more fluid. It overall feels a lot more lightweight, so the performance is definitely better. I still think you should start, if you want a really great experience with a tablet, go for Core M. But if you want something as small as this, the Atom actually does a quite good enough job. Now in terms of battery life, first time I couldn't tell you anything, but now I can already tell you, you will be somewhere at around 4 hours of screen on time or use to maybe 5 hours depending on the brightness, because I still had to use at least 60-70% because like I said, the screen isn't the brightest one. So 75 is a nice compromise in terms of brightness, and the battery life is at around 4.5 hours, which is definitely not that great because so many tablets these days can get a lot more, but you still have to consider that this is full-fledged Windows 8 running on here. So that's about that. Of course, in terms of software, we are still running Windows 10. I didn't run into any issues. It ran all fine. But as I told you, universal apps and the app switching between those can be quite an annoying experience because it just doesn't feel necessary that you have to reload everything. But once again, this is not the fault of this device. So in overall, I still think the major complaint or the major issue that I had with this device is it's still a little bit too heavy, a little bit too bulky, and the value just isn't there. Now, the display is absolutely fine, no complaints here at all. The display is really a good performer now. And with the 4 GB of RAM, it did definitely make a difference. It's overall a way more mature device. And if you want to go for something like that, definitely go for this one, but not the 1280x800 version with the 2 GB of RAM. You will maybe lose a little bit of battery life, which I don't even think will be that much, but you will get a lot more back from that. But I still think the value is just not quite up there yet. And the odd thing is actually I have a hard time finding any prices here for some reason, because on the usual sites that I check for price, I don't even see it. And on the Dell side, it's of course there, but I really won't talk about price because I see so many difference in terms of pricing here in Europe or in Germany especially compared to the US. They always have the way better sales, and that's why it's not really worth talking about the device. If you find it for a good price, I would say something at around 300 and lower is a good price. Everything above that, I would say the value is not good enough. But if that's one of the futures, because there isn't really much up in this space. Everything is way lower, or you have to go for something Chinese, which maybe isn't even that bad. I haven't really reviewed an 8-inch Windows Chinese tablet yet, but the value should be there. But those even use lower end Atom chipsets, so at least the performance is solid here and the overall qualities are good, but you will pay a little bit of a premium for that. So that's it pretty much for it. I still think not the best tablet. I think there is a little bit space, and I still think this kind of category of device is a little bit kind of a dying breed these days, but still. Okay, this was it. I hope you liked it. Give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more content, subscribe to the channel. Until then, I see you next time. Bye.